Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
It's summer, so what do you say you and I take a deep dive? Welcome to the Bible for Busy People. I'm Erica, your host, and I am a super fan of the TV show, The Chosen. And so you and I are going to be taking a deep dive into season 4. And you're thinking one of two things right now. You're going, what is The Chosen? Okay, I'm going to start with you. It is an awesome show about the life of Jesus and the people he called to follow him. And what I love about this show is that people like John and his brother Andrew and Nathaniel and all the other guys, Thaddeus, Big James, Little James, they are not portrayed as people made of stained glass. They are flesh and blood people who mess up and who Jesus picks up when they fall down. It's an incredible show. If you want to find out how to watch it, we've put the 411 for you in the show notes. Now, I want to talk to you if you're saying, Erica, I haven't watched season 4 yet. Are there going to be any spoiler alerts? Absolutely not. You know I wouldn't do that to you, except from a biblical standpoint. So if you don't know the Bible stories, yes, there might be a spoiler alert. Like today, we're going to talk about a murder. It's true. Season 4 of The Chosen begins with the murder of John the Baptist. I believe one of the most interesting and mysterious people in the Bible. I expected to cover his life in one episode, and God surprised me and showed me that actually we're going to study the life of John the Baptist all week long here on the podcast. And I wrote down some things that maybe you've heard about John the Baptist. Maybe you've heard he ate locusts and honey, that he wore animal skins, and yeah, you might have heard that he was beheaded. I think of words like weird and wild when I think of John the Baptist. He was a martyr. He was a prophet, an answer to prayer, and a baby. We're going to cover all of this week. I'm really excited to dive in with you. So are you ready? Okay, we're going to begin in Matthew chapter 14, beginning in verse 1, and we're going to start with his murder. This is kind of like the tale of Benjamin Button, but John the Baptist. Okay, when Herod Antipas, the ruler of Galilee, heard about Jesus, he said to his advisors, "This must be John the Baptist raised from the dead. That is why he can do such miracles." For Herod had arrested and imprisoned John as a favor to his wife Herodias, the former wife of Herod's brother Philip. Let that sink in for a second. John had been telling Herod, "It is against God's law for you to marry her." Herod wanted to kill John, but he was afraid of a riot because all the people believed John was a prophet. But at a birthday party for Herod, Herodias' daughter performed a dance that greatly pleased him. So he promised with a vow to give her anything she wanted. At her mother's urging, the girl said, "Prepare thyself for this. I want the head of John the Baptist on a tray." Then the king regretted what he had said, but because of the vow he had made in front of his guests, he issued the necessary orders. So John was beheaded in the prison, and his head was brought on a tray and given to the girl, who took it to her mother. Later, John's disciples came for his body and buried it. Then they went and told Jesus what had happened. Now, you're about to learn something about Jesus here, because even in his grief, because John the Baptist was his cousin, in addition to being a fiery prophet of God, we're going to see Jesus love others in the midst of his own pain. So as soon as Jesus heard the news, he left in a boat to a remote area to be alone. But the crowds heard where he was headed and followed on foot from many towns. Jesus saw the huge crowd as he stepped from the boat, and he had compassion on them and healed their sick. That's such a beautiful story to me. Have you ever been so downcast and sad-hearted, and yet you reached out to lift someone up and found yourself being lifted up? I hope Jesus experienced that feeling. Okay, so now we know the story of John the Martyr. This dude was a boat rocker. He was unashamed to spread the message that God had placed on his heart before he was even born. This is an incredible story. And now we're going to continue to go backward into his life. So join me now in Matthew chapter 11, beginning in verse 2. John the Baptist, who was in prison, why? Because of Herodias, Herod's mean wife, heard all about the things the Messiah was doing. So he sent his disciples to ask Jesus, "Are you the Messiah we've been expecting, or should we keep looking for someone else?" Jesus told them, "Go back to John and tell him what you have heard and seen. The blind see, the lame walk, those with leprosy are cured, the deaf hear, the dead are raised to life, and the good news is being preached to the poor." And he added, "God blesses those who do not fall away because of me." As John's disciples were leaving, Jesus began talking about him to the crowds. "What kind of man did you go into the wilderness to see? Was he a weak reed swayed by every breath of wind? Or were you expecting to see a man dressed in expensive clothes? No, people with expensive clothes live in palaces. Were you looking for a prophet? Yes, and he is more than a prophet. John is the man to whom the scriptures refer when they say, 'Look, I am sending my messenger ahead of you, and he will prepare your way before you.' I tell you the truth, of all who have ever lived, none is greater than John the Baptist. Yet even the least person in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he is. And from the time John the Baptist began preaching until now, the kingdom of heaven has been forcefully advancing, and violent people are attacking it." Oh, I hope you catch what we just read. Of all the people who ever lived, Jesus said none was greater than John the Baptist. And John had doubts. He was cast into prison for carrying out the message from God, and yet he wondered, I'm sure, surrounded by rats and dripping water, whatever else, I'm sure it was horrific. He doubted, and God continued to love him through his doubt and even encourage him. I hope God is encouraging you today, for you are loved. Thank you for making time for the Bible for Busy People today. If being part of this community is a blessing to you, it's super easy to share this podcast with someone you love. We're all about spreading the hope of Jesus like butter. So if you've got a moment to write a review, boy, we'd really appreciate that. Maybe you need a little prayer today, or you're ready to take that next step with God. I invite you to check out our show notes. You're going to find lots of encouragement there. This podcast is one branch on a tree called Purposely, a podcast network designed with practical podcasts to help you find and thrive in God's purpose for your life. If you've got a pulse, you've got a purpose.